I stand before you today with one unmistakable message about Operation Epic Fury. America is winning. This was never meant to be a fair fight. The Iranian Air Force is no more, built for 1996, destroyed in 2026. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. 4 days in, we have only just begun to fight.
For decades, Iran's generals told their people, told the world, that no foreign force would ever dare move ground troops toward Persian soil, that the Strait of Hormuz was theirs, that any nation foolish enough to try would drown in fire before they got close. Then the orders came down from Fort Bragg. The 82nd Airborne Division, over 2,000 of America's most elite paratroopers, is now en route to the Persian Gulf. And Iran, for the first time in a long time, doesn't have a clean answer. But don't mistake silence for surrender. Because behind closed doors in Tehran, behind the fractured command structure that U.S. airstrikes have spent weeks trying to dismantle, Iran is preparing a response. And what they're planning could make everything that's happened so far look like a warm-up. This is what Iran does next. Let's establish exactly what Iran is facing right now, because the picture is more desperate than their state media will ever admit. In the opening phase of Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion, the United States didn't just strike Iran, it surgically dismantled the architecture of Iranian military power. Roughly 75% of Iran's missile launch sites were destroyed as of early March. Key leadership figures within the regime's command structure were eliminated. The military infrastructure on Kharg Island, the beating heart of Iran's oil economy, was hit hard on March 13th. And now, moving toward the Persian Gulf at speed, 2 Marine Expeditionary Units, the USS Tripoli Amphibious Ready Group with 4,500 personnel, the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group with another wave of Marines, and behind them all, the 82nd Airborne Division's Immediate Response Force, a unit built to deploy within 18 hours, a unit that specializes in seizing airfields, securing critical infrastructure, and holding ground under fire. That is the force bearing down on Iran's coastline. So what does a regime do when the walls are closing in?
The spokesperson for Iran's unified command, Ibrahim Zolfakhari, came out swinging on March 25th. He mocked U.S. ceasefire talk. He said America was, quote, negotiating with itself. He declared that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, would not bow, that they were too committed, too ideologically hardened to let the destruction of their military change their course. This is deliberate. This is theater. And it is also partially true. The IRGC is not a conventional military. It was never designed to fight the U.S. in an open, head-to-head confrontation. It was designed to survive one. It was built on the doctrine of asymmetric warfare, the idea that a weaker force can bleed a stronger one slowly, unpredictably, across multiple fronts simultaneously, until the cost of the war becomes unbearable for the aggressor. And that doctrine is exactly what Iran is reaching for right now. Here is what asymmetric pressure looks like when Iran turns it up to maximum. The Strait of Hormuz is still partially in Iran's hands. Yes, the U.S. has bombed launch sites. Yes, the naval presence in the Gulf is enormous, but Iran still controls choke points. It still has mobile missile launchers, systems that can be rolled out, fired, and hidden again before the U.S. can locate them. These aren't fixed installations that can be bombed in advance. They're ghosts, and they're pointed at everything moving through that strait. Iran has also deployed what military analysts call swarm tactics, waves of fast attack boats, armed drones, and mines scattered through shipping lanes. In the days since the 82nd's deployment was announced, Iranian naval vessels have reportedly increased their activity in the northern Gulf. Small, fast, expendable, designed not necessarily to win a naval battle, but to make every move the U.S. makes cost something. And then there's the Houthi factor. Iran's proxy network, fractured, yes, but not destroyed, still has reach into Yemen, into Iraq, into Lebanon. Reports suggest that as U.S. forces build up in the Gulf, Iranian-linked militias are being activated in ways that could stretch American attention and resources across multiple theaters at once, making the Persian Gulf operation more expensive than the Pentagon's projections account for. This is Iran's playbook. Make everything slower, make everything bloodier. Make the 82nd's arrival feel less like a knockout punch and more like walking into a room full of hidden tripwires. But there's a harder, darker option that Iran's regime is also weighing: Kharg Island. The U.S. knows it. Iran knows it. Every analyst watching this conflict knows it. Kharg Island is the source of 90% of Iran's oil exports. It generates the revenue that keeps the regime alive. In 2024 alone, oil sales brought in $43 billion, 57% of Iran's total export income. If the U.S. takes that island, it doesn't just gain a bargaining chip, it gains a chokehold on the Iranian economy. So here is Iran's most extreme response option, the one that sounds insane until you understand the logic behind it. Burn it. Before U.S. forces can land, before the 82nd and the MEUs can secure the infrastructure, Iran could do what Saddam Hussein did in Kuwait in 1991, set the oil fields and terminals ablaze, destroy the very thing the U.S. is coming to capture, take away the prize entirely. It's a catastrophic choice. It would plunge Iran into a multi-year economic crisis regardless of how Operation Epic Fury ends. Rebuilding those facilities would take years. The revenue loss would be immediate and devastating. But consider what Iran's leadership might be calculating. If the U.S. takes Kharg Island intact, the regime loses leverage and potentially collapses under economic pressure. If Iran burns Kharg Island, the regime suffers, but so does the U.S. mission, and the pain is shared. In the mind of a cornered ideological regime, that calculus can look like survival. This is what makes Kharg Island such a volatile flashpoint. The closer U.S. forces get, the more dangerous Iran's calculus becomes. Let's talk about the missiles, because even with 75% of Iran's launch sites destroyed, what remains is not nothing. Mobile launchers, underground bunkers that survive the initial strikes, isolated sites embedded in terrain that makes aerial detection difficult. These are the weapons that keep American planners up at night, because they don't need to win, they just need to hit something important once. Kharg Island is approximately 140 miles from U.S. assets in Kuwait. The island itself is 7.7 square miles, a small target, and any U.S. force occupying it would, as senior CSIS advisor Colonel Mark Kansian noted, be sitting in range of whatever Iranian missile capability survived the opening strikes. Iran's response to the 82nd Airborne is almost certainly to target that vulnerability, to wait, to let U.S. forces land on or near Kharg, and then to demonstrate to the world that American boots on the ground are not untouchable, that even the most elite paratroopers can be hit, that the cost of holding Iranian territory is not a number the American public is prepared to pay. It's a grim strategy, but it's a rational one for a regime that has nothing left to lose from escalation. Now, here is where things get genuinely complicated. Because at the same time that Iran's military is rattling every cage it has left, there are signals, fragile, contested, barely believable, that some part of the Iranian regime is trying to talk. President Trump declared on March 24th that ceasefire negotiations have tentatively begun, that Iran, desperate after the destruction of so much of its military infrastructure, is willing to discuss terms. He framed Iran as a regime on its knees, ready to promise no nuclear weapons, ready to deal. Iran's official response was contempt. Publicly, they denied everything. They mocked the premise. But here's the thing about fractured command structures, and the U.S. strikes specifically targeted Iran's leadership chain for a reason. Different parts of the regime may genuinely be sending different signals. Some factions may be talking.
Others may have no idea those conversations are happening. The IRGC may be preparing counterstrikes while diplomats in back channels are negotiating terms neither side will confirm publicly. This is the fog of this war at its thickest, and Trump may be exploiting it deliberately. By talking publicly about negotiations that Iran denies, he creates confusion inside a regime that is already fractured. He buys time. He moves the 82nd Airborne into position, while Iran spends energy trying to figure out who, if anyone, is actually negotiating on their behalf. It's psychological warfare layered on top of military positioning, and it may be working.